Okay, so the first item of any agenda is that we ask our new members that have joined since our last meeting to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves to the group and what their interest is in AgRobotics and how they plan on participating and working with us in our working group. So I do see some members from Algonquin College. So both Nadine and Martin, do you want to put on your cameras, please, and introduce yourselves?
Good morning, I'm Martin Savard. I'm the coordinator of the Business Agriculture program at Algonquin College. And I see Nadine is going to be a few minutes joining us. And Nadine's responsibility is with our Office of Applied Research and Innovation. And our interests in the program are slightly different, but somewhat related. In the business agriculture program, we want to get our students involved with AgRobotics as much as possible. It's a two-year diploma, and it's a two-year college diploma. And Nadine, through the Office of Applied Research, has access to the experts in over 300 disciplines. So she's able to bring people from our Bachelor of Automation and Robotics to any projects that she wants to work on. And computer programming, software development, automation, building automation, and things like that. So, of course, I do work very closely with her, and our goals are aligned. But we bring two kinds of different expertise to this group that may be used by any partners that want to reach out to us.
That's excellent. I think we are really interested in getting some more robotics and work being done in Eastern Ontario. So I think this is, the north and the east. So we're really excited to have you on board. Thanks for joining. And we hope you find these meetings valuable and we can make some connections for you. Okay, I don't think I see Sabine Bouchard on from College Boreal. If you are, could you turn on your camera and introduce yourself? Okay. So I guess then we'll move on to our guest speaker, Chris Bunio from TheoryMesh. If you would like to turn on your camera and say hello and share your screen.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me grab some slides to go through here. So, good morning. My name is Chris Bunio. I'm CEO and co-founder of TheoryMesh, and we are the company that's going to be providing the smart farm platform for CAIN, the Canadian Agri-Food Automation Intelligence Network. I'm going to go through a couple of different things. So I'm going to jump between presentations here and talk a little bit about what we do at TheoryMesh, and then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about the Smart Farm Network and what we're actually putting together for them. So let me go to presentation one, talk a little bit about TheoryMesh, and then I'll jump over to what we're doing with CAIN. So with TheoryMesh, we've been in operation for about 3 years, and we're really focused on agriculture and food supply chains as the kind of area that we specialize with. And we're really looking at being able to capture data across the agriculture and food supply chains to be able to just dive into data capture, data collection, and then advanced analytics around that. Some of the things that we're looking at are how do we make sure that we can connect what has happened in terms of things like farm production to the processing that's happened and keep that going right through to the consumer. So one of the major challenges right now in food production and agriculture in general is there's a lot of paper, and even though you get a lot of digitization that happens on equipment like tractors, that information generally doesn't go anywhere today. So you don't end up having that highly digital, highly informed tractor from John Deere or other vendors, providing that data in a way that is used elsewhere in the supply chain. So we're able to grab that data from those machines, from that equipment, from farm practice records, and combine that with what's happening in the supply chain to be able to create kind of a digital record for everything that's happened across the whole supply chain. Now, today we work with our apps and our web applications and in both the farm and the food production side. But at the farm level, one of the things that we've done is really created a platform for integrating data. So today we work with people who are entering data directly into our application. We will interpret spreadsheets that they import into our platform. We integrate with equipment like John Deere through their APIs, and we have the ability to integrate with IoT style devices. So we have a fairly flexible model for how we capture and retain data and how that comes to the platform. So with the Kane Smart Farms, we're using the basic capabilities in our platform to bring that data together, but we're also looking at adding other data interfaces to support the kind of work that's happening on those smart farms. We skip ahead here a little bit. So things, just as an example of some of the scenarios that we'll work through, if we think about areas like carbon intensity or carbon calculations, we're able to bring the data from the farm production at all those different systems, soil, satellite, weather, bring that together and create models for things like carbon intensity. So this is where you'd have a ranking or a rating on what has happened from a farm production perspective to be able to see is that we got somebody
Could everyone please unmute? Thank you.
So be able to calculate things like that carbon intensity and be able to really address the needs of that supply chain. So flexible data capture on the front end, able to do things like calculate that kind of carbon intensity and connect that with the supply chain. Because of the way that we've built the front end on the data side, we're able to really connect with and extract data from all kinds of systems. So my background is in data integration. One of the things that we're really working closely with is working with Microsoft around their Farm Vibes product to be able to get those IoT type data sets into the platform. I can see Dan's got a hand raised.
Hey, good morning, Chris.
Hey.
Just to clarify, the application is built to be able to do these things, or it's able to do them in its current state today? Like it is doing these things today?
It is doing these things today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we have right now we've got integration from a farm machine data level with John Deere. The climate field view integration is rolling out here quite shortly, working with FCC Ag Expert to add that one as well. And we've got a generic IoT endpoint in the application today, and we're reading from other sources to bring that into our data model. So does it today? If we said, hey, we've got a new data source to bring in, it'd be a little bit of work to figure out where the data is coming from, but that works today in the application to integrate those data sources.
Thank you.
Okay, let me stop sharing this set of slides. I'm going to flip over to another presentation here really quickly and just kind of finish off with the architecture here around the smart farms, just so you get a sense of what that project is actually going to do. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the smart farm project is really about building a collaboration and data platform for these smart farm networks. And so this is just kind of a walkthrough of where data flows through this application. So you can kind of walk through 1, 2, 3, 4 on this. But so in the first instance, the farms are going to be sharing data through our farm capture platform. So that could be farm records. So a lot of data that happens on the farm today is actually still manually entered, but they would be giving us access to their information. And we have got those interfaces that I mentioned for IoT devices, farm machines, soil, satellite data, and bring that all into a standardized model. So it doesn't matter where the data comes from. For us, it turns into part of our standardized data model. This is in progress. So we anonymize that data, and we can create anonymized data sets that can go to basically what is a data engine. So this is a shared location that can store that data, aggregate it in the ways that are needed, anonymize it, and basically register that data set so they can be used by others within the smart farm network. We've got the ability to catalog that and then give people a way to explore that type of data, including some flexible reporting tools. And then they can collaborate around that data as well. So we've got a collaboration tool set built right into our platform to allow people to do things like specify details on projects, to be able to show what they're working on in terms of that data, and to be able to really create some interesting collaboration around the particular data that they're working with today. So one of the key areas that is a challenge right now for the smart farms is using things like weather stations where everyone's got one, but the data needs to kind of be aggregated and combined into one place for the network to get value out of that. So we are providing the ability for them to securely share data. So this would be data that stays within the smart farm network and doesn't go to a Google Drive or something like that. And then on top of that, allow them to upload that data into one common place where they can all look at that data together across the map and the locations that they're all providing that data from. So it gives them a common way to access that data, report on it, and then be able to see exactly what's happening under the scenes with that type of data. And will be for all the data that's included in the smart farm networks, that same sort of model applies. So they'll be able to bring data in, kind of share it, collaborate on it, see it within that environment, and work to perform the research. So yeah, so that's what we're doing in a nutshell. As we go here, we'll be integrating more devices, more interfaces, and generally trying to be kind of a full data model across all the uses of farm data within that smart farm network. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions or anybody needs clarification.
Thanks very much for that. This is awesome. I think it's really really needed in agriculture in terms of that. And yeah, I still take paper records too. So anyways, so do we have any questions for Chris? I know that Dan is from the food processing side, so I think he has a great interest in this. Do you have any further questions, Dan?
Drop Kristen. So Chris, you've already met with our BI team, so I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss here. I just found that out yesterday. So sounds like you've given the presentation in Norterra Foods already. So I have a bunch of my own questions that I need to answer between my own ears first before I ask you questions, I think. But thank you for your time this morning anyways.
Yeah, well, appreciate that. And yeah, I didn't go into how this all connects into the food supply chain, but there's a direct connection into what we do with our customers who are looking at farm data and how it fits into their processing side. So
yeah, I mean, I think maybe the big opportunity on the surface here is being a private label co-packer. We've got some customers, not all, but some are asking for, do you have sustainable products? Whatever in the world that is. So, if this is the enabler for us to provide, determine whether something is quote unquote sustainable for whatever customer A, B, C, D, E, or F decide sustainable is, then maybe it's the traceability all the way through to the grocery store shelf or, an external warehouse somewhere, and maybe see that as the potential avenue. True field to fork sustainability tracking, traceability.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on that right now, Dan, and we've got so I didn't go into this because it was focused more on the smart farms, but in our farm platform, we've got a pluggable interface for different carbon intensity models. So we work off of the ability to custom define those. If you've got your own model that you work with, we work with GREET and HOLOS. GREET is the US Sustainable Fuel Standard. Holos is the Canadian tool for basically looking at carbon intensity, and we can bring in custom calculation models and maintain that data through the supply chain. So if you grew a crop of, say it's peppers, we could take all the data from that farm, calculate carbon intensity on that, and then in our platform maintain that through the supply chain. So see that whole traceability right back and maintain that scope 3 coming from the farm, but then also capture scope 1 and 2 in the production and processing of that. So yeah, I think you're spot on with some of the conversations that we're looking at with Norterra.
Yeah, I mean the biggest challenge right now is between the farm or the field and the table. You know, even just on our side.
Oh yeah.
There's 6, 7, 8 different IT systems that are being used by different departments all the way through. So now our biggest challenge is how do we mesh TheoryMesh all those together. Okay, I'm done.
You got it. You hit it on the head. And that's what we're doing with our customers is we're basically helping them to digitize paper, be that one platform that's got all the information, and we integrate with ERP systems and stuff like that in their environments. So yeah, no, you've articulated that well.
Great, thank you. Next, we have a number of questions. So Evan, you're first. Go ahead.
Thanks. That was really interesting. I have a data collection background. I find this kind of thing really critical. So thanks for walking through it. I wondered 2 things, if you don't mind. One, you mentioned compatibility with a variety of IoT devices and so on. Do you have a particular supplier or relationship with data collection devices manufacturers of data loggers and other aspects that are the physical components for the data collection, or and I wondered what kind of relationships you've got. And second, along the lines of what you and Dan were just chatting about, the how challenging is it to get buy-in from the suppliers to the customers you're working with? Is that sort of a major barrier for adoption for you? Because if you get a company like Norterra, but then all of those suppliers being willing to share their data and so on is often a big hurdle in sort of supply chain data collection efforts. And I wondered what kind of resistance you get. It's kind of 2 questions. I don't want you to spend too much time. We can follow up after if you want, but I'm curious about those 2 things. Thanks.
Yeah, we'd definitely love to follow up on it. So on the devices themselves, so far what we've done is we've worked with a number of fairly generic devices. So like IoT-based devices around things like Raspberry Pis and things like that could provide data in a specific format. But that being said, we have been integrating and working with things like RFID sensors for livestock. Like we're a software development team at core. So if whatever you pop up with in terms of data and hardware to integrate with, we're going to figure out a way to do that. So the last thing we're integrating was an RFID sensor for pigs that detected barn movements, and correlating that with temperature and moisture sensors. So whatever the data, whatever format, we're gonna get it in there. In terms of the working with kind of third-party suppliers, it's a mixed bag. Some of them super easy. So John Deere is fantastic to work with. Groups like Bayer, a little bit more difficult. So Bayer, gatekeeps Climate Field View. So there's some challenges around that. So far, we've been able to identify the right data source or an alternate that will work for any project that we've gotten into. So if you don't have, for example, like one of the bigger challenges is farm records. Most of the farm management players out there are not super crazy about sharing their farm-based data. But that being said, if you can show value to both sides, like for us and for them, that's often worth it enough for them to get in there. So yeah, I mean, it's just we just work through it.
And typically over time, things change a little bit too after things are proven. And yeah, like you said, the value proposition is always the most important thing on both sides. So
100%. If we show up with one of our customers who really says like, I really need this data to do something, that tends to be a good driver for the supplier to just get on board with the whole thing. So that helps.
Excellent. Okay, next question, David, please go ahead.
All right, excellent. So great presentation. You are truly trying to solve a wicked problem. And it is a wicked problem because there's people involved. That's the biggest problem. So are you aware of AgriFood Data Canada at University of Guelph?
AgriFood Data Canada.
Michelle Edwards, she's the director, she runs it. Okay, so she's, we're trying to create a central repository, almost like what you're doing, a little more public forum. I think maybe I should introduce you to her and you should talk to her, because this whole idea of getting industry to share all its data so that everybody in industry benefits from it has been an idea in the works for at least 10 years at the University of Guelph, and we haven't been able to solve it. And if you can solve it, you're going to be a hero.
Well, thanks, David. So I think the benefit for us in all of this is that we have a commercial interest in doing the data integration in the supply chain. So like we have got a platform to do that for our customers. And with the smart farm networks, we're taking that and putting it in place in more of a public facing kind of way based on the smart farm members. So I think, you know, even just as we develop our platform, all of our new interfaces, all of our new data acquisition engines all go back into the smart farm platform. So it's a nice model because we're going to continue developing that. The smart farms get the benefit of it. And there's some specialized stuff that we've done for them that's unique to the smart farm environment. But yes, I would love to talk with Michelle and kind of dig in on that.
Yeah. Okay, and then I have a list of questions, but I'll ask one quick one, which is, can you describe your business model a little bit? Because this is the hard part of this created as you go system and getting financial sustainability. And then I'll let other people chime in.
Yeah, you know, it's a great question. I get it all the time. So primarily we are providing our platform to food companies, grain buyers, people who are not at the farm level on the supply chain, who are looking for that data. And in most projects, what we see is that you've got somebody who's concerned about sustainability. So back to Dan's point. So you've got somebody who wants to know about farm production so that they can make a claim, glyphosate free, you know, sustainable, whatever it might be. And they want to connect their supply chain with their farms. So we have a SaaS-based platform. Generally, we're kind of selling that into the food companies or grain buyers, and they provide that farm data capture out to their farms that they're buying product from. And that model applies whether it's grain or livestock, or we've got some projects now going on with coffee companies importing into the EU and looking for anti-deforestation verification. So really, it's like we're kind of selling into that food company and grain company side. The interesting thing is that we're starting to see more interest in sustainability research, which I was a little bit surprised by, but people who want to actually dig in and say, hey, I've got 10 farmers I'm working with. I'm trying to understand from a soil perspective what happens to their farm year over year. Can you help me gather the data to get that kind of insight? And that type of work, you know, because of the smart farms, we've built the platform to be able to kind of work in that type of a model where I'm doing research. So we're seeing some new business models come out as well, where we've got groups that are actually saying, hey, I need to be able to get this data into one place that's organized and then run kind of data science experiments on top of that. So I think we're going to see that be a separate offering here coming up in the future.
That's where your synergy might be with the University of Guelph, maybe.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So I just wanted you to know, Chris, that Michelle is on the call today. So I just said to her, why don't you put on your camera and introduce yourself real quick there?
Perfect. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Chris. And thank you, David, for bringing ADC into the picture. So yes, I'd love to have a conversation with you because we are taking a slightly different approach. We're not looking, because we all know the challenges with it, a central repository just isn't going to cut it. So we're looking at it as decentralized right now. And yeah, I love what you're saying, but got questions, but I figure I'll ask them later.
Yeah, one thing I didn't talk about with the smart farm model is that literally the way that it gets deployed is with each smart farm having their own instance of our data capture tools. So we've got, you know, like we'll have Olds College, Emily, everybody will be their own instance of our data capture tool. So their data lives within their instance of that tool. And then we can combine data across that based on what the smart farms decide they can do. So we can share data sets with a common smart farm area. We ourselves have done a lot of research into distributed learning models. So places where we use learning at the smart farm level to help train machine learning models that can then the model can be shared with the network. So a lot of different ways that we're looking at that sort of decentralized model. So yes, it's a centralized software platform, but the data can either live in a decentralized model or it can be brought together in a centralized way as well. So would love to chat more about that with you, Michelle.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Chuck. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, David asked one of my first question, which was the business model, because that is that's an obvious question in any kind of farm data collection. Since most of the farm data collection business models have gone to being free and being supported by OEMs or pharmaceutical companies or something like that. One of the questions that I was going to ask you regarding the collection of data and the aggregation of the data is the controls on what is being collected in terms of the quality of it. You know, one of the issues that we have is that if somebody spells Roundup with a little r versus a capital R, that negates a lot of the data centralization that can happen. And so my questions are somewhat related, so I'm gonna kind of go through this. So how are you addressing that? Because I would argue that integrating with climate and John Deere Operations Center, it's going to be very difficult and very costly to aggregate that data because a lot of it is garbage. And so just wondering what your approach is going to be on that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm going to go right back to your first comment, and then I'll come back to the data question. The drivers behind farm data capture right now are moving pretty quickly in terms of what the value is, not just to the kind of like food side, but also to the farm. So one example in the US, we're working on projects in sustainable fuel. So there's a 45Z tax credit that's been put into the works, which is hard dollars that go towards sustainable soy and corn production. So the only way you get that is by providing data that shows your carbon intensity that can flow through the supply chain. So there are some direct payment models coming up in places like the US. And then for anybody who geeks out on regulatory issues like I do, the EUDR, the European Union Anti-Deforestation Act, requires certification that there's no deforestation on a location where food has been produced for a small set of crops today, but it's going to expand back to December 29th of 2021. So if you're a beef producer and you're trying to, if you're a beef producer exporting to the EU, you will require certification that says there's no deforestation on the land where anything in that supply chain has been produced. If you think about the beef supply chain, that includes feed and everything else that goes in there. So you're going to have this long supply chain that you're going to have to be able to prove that you had no deforestation in that supply chain to be able to bring that product into the European Union, or face a 4% fine on annual global turnover for every violation of that when importing into the EU. So there's a sustainability component that we're starting to see with companies. There's a really hard regulation piece on that as well, where it's actually, that's going to be a market access issue here pretty quickly. And when we see groups like in California, the clean regulations there, they require full scope 1, 2, and 3 on supply chains for California-based companies. So we're seeing an evolution pretty quickly of the data being required, not just like nobody actually is checking in on farm production. Nobody's actually concerned about the mechanics of it. What they're looking at is where are all these other implications? So scope 1, 2, 3, deforestation, clean fuel, and coming up pretty quickly, we're seeing soil health be the big thing in Canada that's being driven by CANS and other groups like that. So we're seeing kind of an evolving view on that. And because we do this as a farm data capture tool, thinking about the farming context, we're bringing the data together to represent kind of a virtual farm we can take that data and use it for those different purposes without building a specifically limited tool to be able to do that. So if you look out at the remote sensing companies who are looking at soil, that's all they do. They don't do anything else. So we're looking at farm production as its holistic kind of work that gets done and looking at how that informs the supply chain. So yes, so that's a very long answer to your very short first question. When it comes to data cleaning, yeah, it's a challenge. So we have we've got a tool that we basically run that does data interpretation. So for every API that we create or every integration that we create, we run it through what's basically like a translation layer. So when we see things pop up, we do data quality assessments on the data. If there's something that looks like it's going to come up, we'll, in our translation layer, say, oh yeah, we might see Roundup as capital R, small r, capital RO, RO space UND. Like we'll kind of do some of that mapping today. Our goal is to be able to actually turn that into a machine learning module that can clean up a lot of that basic information. So we're working through that today. It's not pretty, but that type of stuff we do see often, and we are working with Leaf to evaluate their new service around being able to clean up some of that imported data. So for us, we've got some routines to do that ourselves. A fairly actually big library of kind of like mapping of bad information into better information. And then working with Leaf, we're hoping that their cleanup service will help with some of that as well, and we can offload some of that. But it is a challenge, and we're not 100% there yet on what we're bringing in. I think the main area that we've seen is being able to pattern match enough to be able to do product categorization. So if you can see that it's kind of Roundup and say, yes, this is a Roundup type herbicide, then you've got that identification as a herbicide, so you can do some of the calculation methods. But again, yeah, to your point, Chuck, it's an evolving kind of science, and as fast as we fix nomenclature, somebody goes and screws it up. So it's going to be a continual development area.
Yeah, because nothing stays static in that space, and that's one of the challenges. And then you're also dealing with different levels of motivation, and that's kind of my lead. You touched on this a little bit when it comes to the money and adding value. At the end of the day, what drives all of this is an incentive to the person who's actually generating the data has to be incentivized to want to do it. And one of the challenges that we've always had, if I take my Haggerty hat off, and I'm very interested in data as a retailer and as a company, and if I put my farmer hat back on, I'm super uninterested in collecting data for anybody else.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that what's in it for me?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I'm wondering about in this business model is how does the revenue flow down to the farmer through the data collection process?
Mm-hmm.
And a good example of that, and you touched on the EU rules. So we're going through this with greenfield ethanol, and greenfield ethanol has a market for distiller grains to the EU. They can only ship there if you check off your different boxes: deforestation, sustainable practices, all these kinds of things. It's great. It's all cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that there's no payment to the farmer for this. This is 100% cost for the farmer, market access only, and no payment to the farmer to incentivize them to collect the data. And so one of the things that I'm wondering about is that if we're going to collect this, how does the farmer share in the benefit? That's one of my questions, and you probably can't answer it. So,
well, we're running a number of different projects in the U.S., Canada, and Europe that are touching on exactly that problem. So part of what we've seen is direct benefits to the farmer through things like 45Z tax credit. So that's pretty clear. It's a payment that goes to whoever's buying the crop, and they can provide some of that back to the farm. The market access is a big issue. So the EU regulations will be a market access blocker. So if you talk to a farm and say, okay, well, you're producing this crop and who's your major market, and they don't know, that's a challenge because often things make their way into Europe and you don't know about it. But if you could not sell a product, like pretty quickly, you're going to go, oh, well, I will do whatever I need to do to sell that product. So we're seeing more of that coming to the forefront. But also for the early adopters, because we're sort of a neutral player in all of this, right? So we're not trying to sell inputs. We're not trying to sell anybody anything other than just better use of data. We can be a data collection platform that's got benefits for those farmers. So some of the things that we've seen already is if I'm a farmer and I've got John Deere and Climate Field View and I've got weather stations and whatever, it's almost impossible to see that in one place today. We bring all that into one place, one platform, one view, and we're not trying to sell you an input based on that. So you just get your data in one spot and move through that. But we are seeing grain companies start to look at the monetization model as well to say, hey, I'm going to get this data because I need it for my supply chain, and maybe there's a premium that gets paid towards that. We work with some direct sourcing food companies who already do provide some kind of a benefit because they do certified products or something that's got a premium in the marketplace. So I think we're going to see more channels coming for this. And I think honestly, like if you look at like Bayer's program or FCC's programs, hopefully Bayer and FCC are not on the call, but they're pretty restricted in what you can do. It's a small payment, and they're getting this data, but the farm can't use that for anything else. Like they're literally not able to take that data and use it for another purpose. It's spelled out in those programs pretty clearly. We have the benefit of saying, hey, like as we develop our platform and we're giving you insights on soil health models and stuff like that, you just get that for free with what comes in our platform today. So there's some technical benefit. There's that being able to see all your data in one place benefit. And then we're seeing the market evolve pretty quickly where there's going to be a necessary transfer to the farm to be able to get this data to maintain market access. And that's one of the bigger components here. And because the platform allows for you to share data, not just with that one food company, you can share it across multiple food companies. We are in the process of looking at being able to create a marketplace type model for sustainable products. So we can have the farm share what they're doing from a sustainability perspective. If somebody is looking for like a low carbon wheat or low carbon grain, share those details and be able to market and monetize that themselves. So we're trying to figure out every possible angle for the farm to be able to make some money off of that, as well as just maintaining their own supply chain. Because we've already heard that there are real market access challenges coming for the food companies. So that's going to be the big kicker here on the farm side. But yeah, Chuck, I'm very aware of kind of the market issues, and we're trying to create some more monetization options there.
Okay, thanks very much. Time for one last question from Stephanie Vickers. Go ahead, Steph.
Thanks, Kristen, and thanks, Chris, for the presentation. And I'm sorry, I had joined a couple minutes in, so I'm not sure if this was answered, but well, one of my questions was answered. Thank you, Chuck, for asking. I had the exact same thing. So yeah, and I'm just looking at the chat. I work in sustainability. It's in my job title, and a lot of farmers get their hackles up because it does require a lot of administrative load for them. Like the data input is a lot for them to want to be doing. So are your clients, would your typical clients be farmers, or are you working with more downstream value chain members? And is there any push to try to reduce the administrative load on farmers? Just from what I understand, it's like you're taking all the information that a farmer has already input and stitching it together into something really helpful. But is there any direction in your company to try to reduce that load from the first step?
Yep. It's a good question. So as much as possible, we're integrating existing data and interpreting that as it's coming into our system. So, just tying in with sustainability, if you have a farm set up on our platform and you're using John Deere just because it's the best data source, you can go from kind of getting registered on our platform to getting a carbon intensity score around your production in about 30 seconds with zero data entry on your part. So we set up as much as possible to use automated data sources to reduce the load on farms. And that includes being able to bring in spreadsheets. We've got an OCR engine, which is, getting up there in terms of accuracy to bring in paper documents. And in general, integrating with different systems to be able to reduce that load on the farm themselves. In the ideal world, the farmer doesn't enter any data. All they do is connect us to their different systems that they're using today, and we pull that data together into a consolidated model. So, if you were to go and ask a farmer to tell you about his fields and his yield and his equipment efficiency, and he's got a mix of John Deere and CNH and whatever else out there, today that's a Herculean task. We just want to make that easy and quick for them to be able to bring all that data into one place and view it regardless of the source, and view it in the same way. So going back to Chuck's point on that data cleaning piece, we're trying to help clean up that information as it comes in to make sure that the farm can see it all as one one sort of standardized model. We don't sell directly to farms today. We have some farms that are on our platform because they're very interested in their own information and being able to see things like carbon intensity for their crops, so they're interested in getting all their information in one place. We've had some very interesting conversations around farms that like to have legacy equipment that's not digital, and how they can kind of bring that into the digital world. So some interesting conversations about how do you extend out to those types of scenarios. But at the end of the day, like, we're trying to facilitate an easy collection, easy aggregation, and easy exchange of information. And that has always been our goal, is to make this as easy as possible. So whether your data comes on a spreadsheet or it comes on paper, it comes on from a machine, or we're grabbing satellite imagery, we're trying to make that as simple as possible for the farm level. And as I was saying with Chuck, like, monetization of that in different ways outside of their normal supply chains are also a big focus for us. So one thing that we do, we haven't quite figured out how to monetize this yet, but I'll throw it out there. Our platform uses blockchain all the way through to make sure that we've got traceable records. We can create an NFT out of pretty much anything in our system. So I envision that there's some day where you're selling a load of grain, and alongside that you're selling the NFT that represents the sustainability data from that grain. So we can create that today. It's the monetization capability for that. So we've got some projects on the go in Africa, which are very early stage, but we're looking at data around things like coffee and cocoa and being able to kind of package up the sustainability information to be able to monetize outside of the direct procurement supply chain for these companies. So that data is useful to lenders, it's useful to other groups working on different types of projects, and being able to just take that data, package it in a way that you could exchange and monetize it is something that's probably not, I don't know if that's ever going to land in North America, but in Europe and Central America and Africa, there's a big opportunity around that. So we don't know where all those models are going to go, but we're trying to make it as easy for the farmers as possible and allow them to have other opportunities to monetize their data and their production.
Okay, thanks. And I actually have a lot more questions just based on your answer to that. So I don't know if I'm going to put them either in an email, or if you're okay with it, maybe we can set up another chat offline. I know there's probably other people that have questions and we don't want to monopolize the time. So I don't know how you want to handle this, Kristen or Chris, but
yeah, I think we can, if Chris, you want to put your email in the chat there, that people can follow up directly with you for further questions, because there's definitely a lot of interest in this. There's always questions around data sharing, who owns the data, and just how to make things easier at the farm level, because let's face it, there's more coming at growers every day, every day, in terms of red tape and regulation and just trying to survive and make a profit, right? And then also trying to be environmentally sustainable. So everyone on this call has an interest in this, and so it was very timely, and we really look forward to working together with you and TheoryMesh, and in terms of what we're trying to establish here in Ontario to become part of that Smart Farm Network, and just continue to learn together, to continue to make improvements, so that we're all of our producers and farmers in Canada are successful. So anyways, yes, please put your email in the chat. We really appreciate the presentation on short notice, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and build networks with you. Thanks
That
very
sounds
much.
Yeah, and I'm email is in the chat, and I'm happy to connect with anybody offline to discuss further. So thank you very much for the opportunity today, and great questions. I'm always open to more.
Yeah, Kristen, this is such a big topic that this could be a whole nother working group. And really, if you're gonna have follow on here, try and make it as open and public as possible, because we all do need to work through this together. And people have been looking at this problem for 10, 20 years. So it's great, but don't close the door and go private behind the scenes. Work with us.
Well, my suggestion was, and Chris and I chatted a bit when I was in Winnipeg. But one of the things I'm thinking about is making a subcommittee on data related to the Innovation Farm Network. You know, just as you've indicated, David, so we can kind of keep this all, keep it moving, but also make sure that the group stays informed. You know, so I think, you know, I have some more questions. Steph has questions. We know that, you know, TheoryMesh is involved with Kane. We're trying to have this smart farm network. So, you know, I don't see why we would want to reinvent any wheels. And so I think if there is and Medet, he is correct. I have a conference call this afternoon on that exact thing on AgriData and the CSA group. So this whole idea is going to move forward. So I think maybe having a subcommittee on this ag data and how it's going to fit within the Innovation Farm Network. You know, send Aaron a note and CC myself and Kristen, and we'll put a group together, and then we can report maybe once a month or every couple of months as to what our updates are, you know, on this data piece and what we're going to do.
I think that's an excellent idea, everyone, because definitely this, like Chris was alluding to, that this is moving very quickly, whether it's being a push or pull direction from market or just from actually manufacturers. So yeah, definitely something that we need to help direct and help have input into. So yeah, excellent.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, and there's been lots of spits and stops with this, you know what I mean? Whether it was Farmer's Edge and climate, and there's been lots of people have been trying to dance around this space with varying degrees of success. And we want it to be successful at the end. That the point of this is that, you know, we want this at the end. So
exactly.
Yeah, and I'm happy to play whatever role you need me to play. One thing that that I will share is, you know, our whole goal is that making that data useful for players in the supply chain. So we're not trying to sell inputs, we're not trying to sell weather stations. We got no play on that. We're really looking at data and how does that data become useful to the supply chain itself, to the farms themselves. So how do they get value from that? But then how does that come along that entire supply chain? So I'm here. My email's in the chat. Happy to chat with anybody directly or be in some of those conversations as you're setting them up. But thanks.
Thanks again. Really appreciate your time. Okay, I guess we do have some more on the agenda. I'm not going to go through all of the upcoming meetings and whatnot. Just if there's anything that's been missed, please send an email to myself and Aaron and Chuck, and we'll get those added to the agenda next week. Moving on, I have some project updates there. Chuck, if you wanted to go, and then Garson, I know you were going to talk a little bit about this TheoryMesh connectivity through Kane, and you could just maybe kind of explain that a little bit to the group. So we'll go first with Chuck. Go ahead.
Actually, I was kind of monopolizing the conversation here earlier, so if Garson wants to go first, that's fine. I don't have a lot of updates, you know, going.
Sure. Sorry, everybody. I joined a bit late this morning, but I was listening keenly to the discussion afterwards. So what we have done at Kane in recognition of the need to pull together, be able to integrate a lot of the data that's being collected or being thrown at farmers these days from different organizations and different technologies. was to work with TheoryMesh to create a bit of a data platform again, as Chris mentioned, as Chris described in his presentation, to pull together that common platform. And so our target really isn't to have farmers use it, because of the complexity involved that we believe, at least initially. Although it's great to hear that Chris is working on a way to make it more seamless for farmers at the farm level. But our goal really is to make the platform, make the data capabilities available to our smart farm network. So these are groups that would have some infrastructure, some capacity to be able to work through that complexity, or to make use of that data in some manner. And in cases where they might not have that capability, we're also looking at, or Canada is also exploring ways in which we can provide that capacity, either through a dedicated staff member at Kane with the appropriate expertise in data science, or through a third-party organization that works in that space. The other piece of what we're doing with TheoryMesh, or the TheoryMesh platform, is to allow our smart farm networks to be able to collaborate more during the course of their projects. So in the case where you have different network members that, if they're different universities, for instance, they might be working on different platforms, right? One university might be Google powered, another one might be Microsoft powered, right? And so we're hoping to be able to bring together or make use of a common platform for discussions, for collaboration, for data viewing, for data management within a common platform as well. And in that sense, we're also at this stage supporting the cost of that data storage. And certainly one of the things that we are keenly interested in is the data sovereignty piece to that data coming from the smart farms and from the individual smart farm sites or partners. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing with TheoryMesh right now, creating a platform for data storage and data integration, but also a conduit for individual project or individual activity collaboration among potentially disparate network members.
Thanks, Carson.
Sure thing.
Yeah, thanks very much.
So just a couple of updates from our side of things. For the AgRobots, we are getting a bulb transplanter and seeding unit for an AgRobot that we can use on a trial if someone is interested. So I thought so that is coming in the next couple of weeks, which is a little bit different. So this bulb planter can do garlic and do different things. We have a robot coming from France that they want to do trials on, which is called a Vita Rover. And the Vita Rover is a mowing robot that can be left unattended in orchards and vineyards and that kind of stuff. It charges itself. So it has its own solar battery bank that allows its own charging. So we'll be looking for a site to run that machine somewhere. I'm sure lots of people are interested in having an autonomous grass harvester. What's interesting about this robot is that it's also suitable for like vegetation management. So they are talking about, solar panels, solar farms, railroad tracks, rougher terrain, which is a little bit unique compared to the other autonomous mowers that are on the market. The other one is that Burrow has agreed to send us a couple of robots for the spring of 2024. So I just got actually while we were on this call, I got an email from Don Black from Burrow confirming that. So it'll be the same as every other robot we've got, and I don't really know what to do with it yet, and I'm looking for ideas. So people remember about the Burrow robot. It's a tow, pull, carry robot. It has a follow me feature. It's a lot like the Oz robots that we have, just that they're bigger and faster. So they can, you know, they can exceed walking speed, and they can carry a lot more weight. And so this would be the case of planting. So those are some things that are coming for some projects for this spring.
I think Carrie would be interested in that. Carrie from Flowers Canada, Ontario.
Yep.
Absolutely. Love to learn more about that for sure.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, we are getting short on time here. So I guess my big question to the group is we did have some funding programs close, the OAFRI, the Ontario Agri-Food Research Initiative, the first call for proposals closed last week, January 11th. And we did hear from a few people last week on some projects they submitted. I was just wondering if anybody else has submitted projects through that program, just out of interest sake for the whole working group. Anybody had anything else that they submitted?
We had one that we submitted on OAFRI.
Yeah, good. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that the bioenterprise portion of the OAFRI funding has been is open for applications. It opened on the 15th, so the beginning of this week. So take a look there as well. And we are still waiting for the Agritech Innovation Initiative for the proposal applications to be posted. The Agricultural Adaptation Council is going to be administering that program. We've asked around a bit, and we hear that those probably are going to be posted around January 26th. So, and then it'll be open for the intake on February the 15th. So I do believe that program will be heavily subscribed. So I think that just be keep looking on the website if you have an interest there of submitting something. So with that, those are the key highlights I wanted to draw your attention to. Now we have a couple of minutes for roundtable. If there's anything else that anyone thinks would be of interest to the group and would like to share, we'd really welcome that. We do really want to encourage participation from everyone who's attending our meetings, just so that we can, continue to build our network and build these cross-functional teams for various research projects. So yeah, please don't be afraid to speak up or ask questions. There's never a dumb question. We're all learning together. So yeah. So any other updates from anybody in the group? Okay, well, we are at time. Thanks everyone for your participation, and talk to you next week.
Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah,
thanks, Aaron. Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thanks, Dan, for the good idea for TheoryMesh to have as a speaker.
Yes.
I don't know that
exactly.
that was me. But I just reacted to him showing up on the agenda.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks.
See you guys.
See ya.
Oh.